Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2020-21 FAFSA Line by Line Demo Webinar. My name is Maisha Challenger, and I'm an Awareness and Outreach Specialist here at the U.S. Department of Education in the Office of Federal Student Aid. I hope everyone is having a great day. We have a lot of participants on this webinar today for an exciting topic, the FAFSA Form, and how we go through the actual application. A lot of people have questions, especially students and parents. I know a lot of you that have signed up are students, our parents, our counselors, our individuals, coaches working with students and parents, and want to know, what does the FAFSA look like? What questions are asked? And also trying to understand or dispel myths about how hard it is to fill out. Well, this is the webinar for you. We're going to go through an actual demo of the FAFSA application line by line so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So let's get started. So just a quick overview and agenda. We're going to talk just before we go into the demo about the FAFSA process, because it's really important before you go through the FAFSA to understand what it is, what the FAFSA is used for, and the process. So then we're going to go through the demo, then followed up by financial aid, federal student aid resources, and then we're going to answer some of your questions at the end. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of you online today, and I have colleagues standing by waiting to answer some of your really important questions. And then at the end of the presentation, I will definitely try to share some of the questions, of course, pending time with you all, so you can hear some of the feedback or some of the questions from the audience. So again, if you do have questions, please type them into the chat box, and that way we can have our colleagues standing by answering your questions. So before I go into what the FAFSA is, it's really important just in general to understand there are many options that are available to you all to further your education. So a lot of you are thinking about college, right? And we're thinking about four-year colleges, but there's more than four-year public and private colleges. There's also community colleges. There are career schools. There are technical schools, part-time classes, and online college and courses where you can use financial aid to assist you in going to school. So some of you may want to start at a two-year school. You may want to go to a technical school. There's a lot of available options for you. And we want you all to be mindful of those options that are out there and take advantage of what is there for you. So we just wanted to share that with you today. So here is a really important question. What does FAFSA stand for? A lot of people are like, I know it's federal, it's free, it's financial. Well, let's go through what it actually stands for. It is free, is the first F, application for federal student aid. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is at no cost to you. The website is fafsa.gov. That is where you go to fill out the application online. So again, this application is used for so many purposes as it relates to assistance to help you pay for your educational expenses in college. There's over $120 billion available to individuals who want to pursue post-secondary education. And it all starts with filling out this form. I think it's also important to remember that there is federal financial aid, there's state aid, and then there's institutional aid. So the school provides assistance, the state that this student is attending school in will provide assistance, the federal government provides assistance, and then there's scholarships. There's tons of scholarships that you all that are listening hopefully are taking advantage of from private organizations that can assist you along with federal financial assistance. So again, be mindful, the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. So right now, the 2020-21 FAFSA form is available. The form became available, I'm sure most of you know. If you don't, it became available October 1st. So we're about a month and about 2 weeks, about 6 weeks into this application. For most of you all that are going to be freshmen or attending school in the fall of 2020, this is the application for you. If you haven't filled it out yet, that's okay. You still have time. but we really want you to try to apply as soon as possible. And the form is available now. So you rising seniors or you individuals who are considering going to school in the fall of 2020, this is the application that you need to fill out. So here is your 2020-21 financial aid forecast. The federal government provides 3 programs in federal financial assistance in the form of grants, which are free money that does not have to be repaid, loans, money that has to be repaid, and work study, where you work part-time to pay your educational expenses. In this wonderful visual right now, it's sunny. The Pell Grant is one of our grant programs that we offer. That an individual that has an EFC of 0, we talk about, one that has the most need, may be eligible for a Pell Grant up to $6,195. That's the maximum Pell Award based on your need. Work study is on campus or off campus. You can work part-time. That is money that goes directly to the student to pay off educational expenses. And then loans. Loans are also provided. There are different student loans. There's also a parent loan that we provide. There's a word called subsidized and unsubsidized. Unsubsidized is where the student is responsible for the interest, and subsidized is where the government pays the interest on the loan. But these are the programs that we offer when filling out the FAFSA form. So, as I mentioned, here's what you need to know. The FAFSA launched already on October 1st. Now, here is some key information that you need to know about the FAFSA form, your tax information. So for the 2020-21 FAFSA, tax information is needed from the parent, supporting parent or parents, and the student if the student has worked. So what we did about a year ago is decided that when you filled out the FAFSA, and I don't know if you all remember, a couple of years back, the FAFSA was available January, but we moved it back to October. We would ask for the previous year's information, but to avoid people waiting or guesstimating, or maybe they haven't filled out their taxes, we are now asking for information 2 years back or prior. So for the 2020 FAFSA, instead of 2019's information, we want 2018's information. And it's really important to understand, again, for the 2020 FAFSA, we want 2018's information. And as you see in that last graphic, there's no need to update it after filing your 2019 taxes because we're not requesting 2019 information. Now, here is a very critical point because some of you are probably asking, well, wait a minute, if I'm filling out the 2020 FAFSA, 2018, I may have been working, but 2019, I wasn't. So this is where the financial aid office at the school is critical. If there is a significant difference in your tax information between 2018 and 2019, although the FAFSA still wants 2018's information, make sure you talk to the financial aid office and they will let you know how to proceed or what information they need from you to still, with 2018's information, assess a financial aid package for your student. So again, this is where if the tax information is different, significantly different, talk to the financial aid office. But for FAFSA purposes, we are looking for that 2018 information. So another key component of the FAFSA that some of you may have heard of is something called the IRS data retrieval tool. That data retrieval tool, and you'll see in the demo, we'll show you what it looks like when you're filling out the form, is what you can use to transfer your tax information from the IRS website. Really great, amazing tool. It instantly retrieves your information depending on how you filed, and then that information is transferred into your FAFSA form. So you don't necessarily have to have it right in front of you. If you're using the tool and you're eligible to use the tool, you can just transfer over the information. Now keep in mind that when the information is transferred over, you won't be able to see numbers. It'll just say transfer from the IRS, but it will be a successful transfer of the information needed to fill out and complete the FAFSA. The IRS data retrieval tool is a tool that the schools like. You can still also manually put in the information. But again, wonderful tool to use. So another thing I want to share with you is there are 2 ways to complete the FAFSA. A lot of you have completed the FAFSA on your desktop, using a computer, using a tablet. What we did was we redesigned the way fafsa.gov looks. We also created a mobile-friendly version, and there's also an app. So when you look at the FAFSA on fafsa.gov, whether you're looking on your phone and your desktop, they're going to look exactly the same now. We made it easier and more user-friendly for you. So the redesigned fafsa.gov shows you that the screen size fits the images that are it's user-friendly. Students and parents can complete the FAFSA form on a mobile device with the same ease as a computer. And that's what I was trying to convey earlier. What you see on the desktop will look just like it will look on your phone. The questions are displayed in a very user-friendly way and with ease, so that it almost should feel like you're looking at a computer even when you're looking at it on your phone. So again, it's an easier way to fill out the form. Then another exciting thing that I want to share is we now have a mobile app. So aside from the desktop and looking at it on your phone at fafsa.gov, we have a mobile app called the myStudentAid mobile app. In this mobile app, there's a lot of different features. You can fill the FAFSA out. So this 2020-21 FAFSA, if you go to the My FAFSA section on the mobile app, you can complete, sign, and submit your FAFSA form. There are also additional features available in our mobile app. You can view your loan history. You can access the My Checklist, which will give you guidance and next steps towards tracking your progress. You can also contact federal student aid centers and also create an FSA ID and access your information there. And also access one of our many wonderful, resourceful websites, studentaid.gov. So we have a wonderful app. It is free. You can download it at the Google Play Store or the Apple Store and use it at your leisure. So we've given you many different ways to access and complete your FAFSA. So another thing I want you all to remember is you have to complete the FAFSA every year you are in school. So for those that are just starting and this is your first year, congratulations. You're going to become pros every year moving forward, because once you fill it out, you must fill it out in your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior and senior year in college. So it's not a one and done application. Every year, what you put down will determine what your financial aid package will be. Also, it's important to be mindful of deadlines. It's important to know that your state has a deadline, the school has a deadline, and the federal government has a deadline. So as I mentioned earlier, it's important to know that there's state aid available, and that's a different deadline than the FAFSA. The FAFSA is going to be an 18-month cycle, but then next year, when you all are going to be sophomores, you'll fill out another FAFSA application. The institution also has financial assistance or aid that they also offer. Be mindful of those deadlines as well. For FAFSA purposes, it has become available October 1, and you now have time to start completing it, but also be mindful of the state deadlines, which are a little different than the FAFSA deadline and the school deadlines. And then when you are completing the FAFSA, you can list up to 10 schools at a time on one form. A lot of people think, oh, I can only do one school at a time. You can list up to 10 schools, and we encourage that you put down more than one school, because each school is going to offer a different amount of aid to the student. So again, up to 10 schools are possible on one application. And if you have an 11th school, because you are like, I want to keep all my options open, that's perfectly okay. What you can do is for the existing 10, once you've submitted your application, you can go back in, replace one of the schools with an 11th school. It won't erase the pre-existing school's information. So again, 10 schools is great. And we mentioned FSA ID earlier. The way that you will sign your FAFSA application is by creating an FSA ID. That is a username and password directly related to the student and the parent. So the student has to have an FSA ID and the parent has to have an FSA ID. Both need one to complete the application. It's a fairly simple process. There's a couple of questions that you're asked. There's challenge questions. There's also a Social Security verification that is required, but you don't have to wait for the verification in order to complete the FAFSA. Once you complete a FSA ID, you can sign your new FAFSA right away. So now that I've given you a quick overview of what the FAFSA is, what type of federal financial aid programs are available, and some of the different tools needed to complete your FAFSA. Let's get to that demo. I know you guys are really excited to figure out what is this new FAFSA going to look like and what questions are part of the application. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our demo site. And this is literally what a FAFSA application is going to look like. Now, again, this is a demo site. So as we're going into the demo site, this is what you're going to see when it's time to fill out your FAFSA form. And so for intent and purposes of the demo, I am going to complete the FAFSA. And my name is Melissa Johnson. So Melissa, as you all know, will have Melissa in this instance will have a social security number. And so we're going to create one for her. Now here's a new feature with the FAFSA form that is really important. The social security numbers in the new application are now masked because again, we want to create security when completing the form. If you want to see the social security number, all you have to do is click right there so you can see it, okay? And so again, initially they're masked for security purposes. And then Melissa's date of birth, Melissa just had a birthday. So her birthday is November 1st and she was born in 2001, okay? We're gonna click next. So here you see, you've got welcome Melissa, and it tells you the information that you need, and then we click next. So here's our disclaimer, and this is an added feature we created last year with our FAFSA application because again, the information here is used solely for the purpose of completing the FAFSA application and used solely by the Department of Education. None of this information should be used for any type of criminal activity, and we need everyone, once they see this disclaimer, to accept. So here we go. We are now seeing that there are two options when completing the FAFSA application. For those rising seniors that are going to be freshmen in 2020, we're going to start the 2020-2021 FAFSA application, okay? Now, here's another tidbit. You can create your FSA ID at any time. However, if you haven't created your FSA ID prior to starting your FAFSA application, that's okay. You can create it right then and there in the application. Right here is where you can see that you can create your FSA ID. So we're starting our 2020-21 FAFSA. The save key is for temporary use for you or the parent to return to the specific location in the FAFSA or on the FAFSA. So this is kind of like, I call it like a password, your save key, and you can create any word that you want it to be. So I'm just going to use a 4-letter word for purposes of the demo. My word is test, and then click next. So here we go. Now, here are some key things to think about when you're looking at the FAFSA. If you ever need help, you've got the little question mark here. You always want to make sure you save information on your application because you just never know with computers whether information doesn't get saved, there's a glitch, or so it's always important, and that's just something I suggest, is saving your information. If you ever want to see the summary of information you provided, you can click on FAFSA summary. And then if you just want to start over, there's information you've forgotten, you can always go back, but if you are like, you know what, I just need to start over, you can reset, and then you can exit. We give you lots of opportunities to decide what is best for you. The introduction page tells you, how can I get help completing the FAFSA? How many steps does it take? How long will it take? This is all information that you can look at your leisure and just use the arrow to scroll down to see the information. We're going to click next. So now at the top of the screen, you can see all the different sections that we're going to go through. Now remember, I know a lot of you are like, that's going to take forever, but I promise you, this tutorial will help in the process, and it really isn't so bad. So we're going to now do student demographic. So what we're going to do is Melissa's name is there, her social security is there. Melissa has a middle initial, and that's K, and her date of birth is there. So we're going to click next. So they're asking for Melissa's email address. So Melissa's email address, again, for demo purposes, is mjohnson@gmail.com. And we're going to re-enter her email address, mjohnson@gmail.com. and then the telephone number. And again, we're gonna, wait a minute, what happened? So as you can see, the FAFSA sees that the emails don't match. So trust me when I say, if there's an error, the form will catch it and notify you that there is something that is not matching. So based on the error message coming up, now I see what I did wrong. So we changed and corrected the email address to mimic the initial email address. And then we're just going to create an arbitrary number, 202-555-1212. We're going to click next. So now it's asking for Melissa's mailing address. So Melissa lives at 111 Apple Street in Washington, D.C. So her district or her state is District of Columbia, and her zip code is 21100. Then we're going to click next. Now it says you must enter a city, okay? And so in country if it's not the United States. So we put in Washington. Let's see what comes up. Let's change the zip code. And this is just to give you an idea that if you're not sure of how things should work, it's okay, you can go back and change them. So the next question is, have you lived in the District of Columbia for at least 5 years? And the answer is going to be yes. Now, here's something that I want to show you all. If you're unsure of the question or you want a little more information, you've got a question mark arrow that will give you a little more details about what the FAFSA form is looking for. And so here it tells you lived in your state of residence for at least 5 years. Select yes if this is your state of legal residence and you've lived in this state for 5 or more years. So again, it's just giving you a little more guidance. So she has lived in the state for 5 years. Now here's another question. Am I a US citizen or US national? Are you an eligible non-citizen? No, I'm not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. So if you're a US citizen, yes, you would click yes. There are certain categories that are eligible for the classification of eligible non-citizen. If you are not a citizen or eligible non-citizen, so undocumented students do not qualify for federal financial aid. However, there are some schools that provide institutional aid to undocumented or DACA students or state aid. You would have to check with the state agency of the respective state you live in or the institution to see if they offer that. But for intent and purposes of the FAFSA, you must be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen to receive federal financial aid, okay? So we're gonna click I am a US citizen and click next. So we're still on student demographic information, as you can see up here. And it says, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college in the 2021 school year? And so when you click on the drop down, we're going to say high school diploma. But again, there are other options, homeschooled or GED certificate. All of those qualify or make you eligible to receive federal financial aid. What college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the 2020-21 school year? And we're going to say our first bachelor's degree. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 2020-21 school year? It defaults to no. A lot of times people were getting confused. And so you won't have your degree until, you won't have your bachelor's degree for a couple of years after. But again, this defaults to no. So we're going to say no. What will your college grade level be when you begin the 2020-21 school year? So it'll be never attended college first year. Are you interested in being considered for work study? Now remember, we talked about work study earlier. And we talked about being considered for work study, which is working part-time to pay off your educational expenses. We always suggest you say you want to be interested in work study. It's also based on need. It is need-based aid. You can say yes, and then if you qualify, you're eligible for work study, you can talk directly to the financial aid office and they'll let you know how, they'll let you know what work study is or isn't available for you. But we're going to say yes and click next. So here's where we're talking about whether you are a male or female. Now, Melissa is a female, but a lot of people wonder if you clicked male, most men are required to register with the Selective Service. Again, this is just part of the process in filling out the FAFSA form, but I wanted to show you what that looks like. For this particular scenario, Melissa is a female, and we're going to click next. Now, here is where it asks you for driver's license information. You do not have to provide the information, but if you have one, we ask you to. Again, it's not mandatory. And then your driver's license state. We're going to click next because we don't necessarily have to provide it. Now, it asks if Melissa, is she a foster youth or was she at any time in the foster care system? Now, if you know anyone that is the case, we can say yes, and I just want to show you for purposes, we'll just click yes. And then at some point she was in foster care, but she no longer is. And so then it asks you the highest school completed by parent 1 and parent 2. So her mom has completed high school and her dad has completed high school. And then we're going to click next. So as you can see, we move on to another section. And remember I mentioned if you just want to save the information, you can click save and your information has been saved. As you see here, it's like your application was successfully saved. And again, that's just because you just want to make sure all the information you're putting in, you don't lose it. So now we're talking about school selection. So it asks Melissa for the name of her city, enter the name, city, and state of the high school she attends. And so Melissa, who lives in Washington, D.C., goes to Woodrow Wilson High School. And it says, what city is your high school located? And then what state? So because it's in the District of Columbia, and if you're not sure, you can always search. So let's click search and look. The only record that comes up is Woodrow Wilson High School, and that is her high school. So we're going to click select that high school, and then we're going to click next. And so it says, Melissa, based on the information you've provided, we have determined that you may qualify for federal student aid. Continue through the application to determine how much aid you will receive. So now, remember earlier, I mentioned you can add up to 10 schools at a time on your FAFSA. So let's add some of the schools that Melissa is looking to attend. Now it asks if you know the federal school code. If you don't, that's okay. We can look the schools up by name. So the first school that Melissa is interested in is American University. Wonderful school. So now let's search for American University. And when we do a search, it comes right on up. So we're going to click that, but we want to add a couple of more schools because remember I mentioned to you, it's really important if you're not sure or there's some schools that you are applying to that you put down one or more schools to see how much financial aid each school will give you because each school, as I mentioned, might give you a different amount of aid. So another school that Melissa is wanting to attend is the University of Maryland. So let's put the University of Maryland and we're going to search. And when we search for the University of Maryland, as you can see, there's a lot of different schools listed. So it's really important to make sure you're listing the correct school. So there's University of Maryland, Baltimore. There's University of Maryland, College Park. There's Loyola University, Maryland. So it can get a little confusing if you're not sure. There's also University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. She wants to go to the University of Maryland, College Park. So we're going to select that, and then we're going to add one more school. So one more school that she wants to go to is Catholic University. So we're going to put Catholic, and we're going to put the District of Columbia, and we're going to click search. Now, here's something really important that I want to show you all. A lot of times when you do school searches, some of the schools may have a law school or a med school, and a lot of times people just rushing will click the very first school they see, but that's the law school. She wants to start at the undergrad. So Catholic University of America. So it's really important to make sure when you are selecting schools that you're looking at the school that is not a graduate or postdoctorate or law school, okay? So now that we've gotten 3 schools, and up here, which is great, it says you have 3 schools selected, we're gonna click next. And actually, I'm gonna go back because here's what I want you all to see actually here. If you click on View College Info on this screen, it gives you a synopsis of in-state, out-of-state tuition, the net price average, the graduation rate, retention rate. A lot of this information can also be found using the College Scorecard tool. But this is really important because it gives you an idea of what the school costs, and also graduation rates and retention rates, how students are staying, transfer rates, etc. So you can also print this page, which I think is amazing, but it's good to know that it's there. So Melissa is going to live on campus. Look at the options she has: on campus, with parent, or off campus. Melissa's ready to get out the house, and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna live on campus. And again, all these things factor into your financial aid reward package. We're gonna click next. So this is a question about dependency status and what is her marital status as of today. Melissa is single, but it gives you options if she's not. But for intents and purposes of today, she is single. So now, again, we're in a different section. This is dependency status. So when it comes to the FAFSA, you are considered independent or dependent. There's two categories. You are dependent, obviously, if you are raised by mom or dad, or just mom or just dad. But for intent and purposes of the FAFSA, you are independent or dependent. So let's answer these questions. Do you now have or will have children who will receive more than half support between July and June? And the answer is no. Do you have dependents who live with you and receive more than half of their support? Again, another question about who's with you. The answer is no. And we're going to click next. So here's another question, again, regarding dependency. Are you currently serving on active duty? Are you a veteran? At any time since you turned age 18, were both your parents deceased? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? Now I'm going to click on the question mark here so you all can kind of see a little more details about some of these questions, because these are detailed questions and a lot of you are like, hey, am I emancipated minor? Am I homeless? And again, the definitions, again, are FAFSA specific. So as determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you an emancipated minor? So if you click on here, what this will do is tell you what we mean when we say emancipated minor, and you must provide a court's decision. So these are all really important so that you can see what exactly we are looking for on the FAFSA. But none of these are applicable to Melissa, so we're going to say none of the above and click next. Were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? And again, this is a key topic. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm homeless, you know, because I don't live at home. But again, for FAFSA purposes, and again, the financial aid office, if you're unsure, will be able to ask you for supporting documentation. If you think you are, you can click yes. However, the school will ask you for supporting documentation, and you should use the guidelines provided by the FAFSA to define whether you are or not homeless. We're going to say that she's not homeless and click next. So here is where, based on the answers to the dependency status questions, Melissa is considered dependent, which means she must provide parental information. Now, here's another interesting scenario where a lot of people or parents are like, I don't know that I want to provide my information on the FAFSA form, okay? Or students are leery about asking the parents for information. But in order to complete the application, you must have parental information. So let's say Melissa is unable to provide information about her parents. Her parents are just like, I don't want to provide the information. If she clicks, I'm unable to provide information, she gets a notification saying we will not be able to transfer over any parent information. We will not be able to calculate an EFC. An EFC is the number that the school uses, an expected family contribution, to determine how much aid the student will receive. And you may be limiting the amount of federal student aid she may be eligible for. So if I click next, there's also something called special circumstances. So let's say Melissa's unable to provide parental information because of a financial hardship with her parents. Her parents are deceased, they're incarcerated, there are other circumstances. That is something called a special circumstance where without parental information, the school will recognize it as a special circumstance and something called a professional judgment or dependency override, where based on documentation, without having parental information, the student can still receive financial aid. However, if there is not a special circumstance and the parent does not want to provide information, the student only qualifies for unsubsidized loans. Again, if it is not a special circumstance, the student only qualifies for unsubsidized loans, which means there's no grants there aren't any grants available, work study is not available, and it takes you out of a pot of larger money. So Melissa says to her parents, hey, I need your information. They are now ready to provide their information. So now she will provide parental information. So in this instance, this is where your parents' information will go. For the FAFSA, there are a lot of categories, not a lot, but there's 5 categories. Your parents may have never been married, unmarried, and both parents living together, married or remarried. So if your mom has gotten remarried and you're living with your mom and stepdad, or you're living with your dad and stepmom, we require information from both parents. If your parents are divorced or separated or widowed. So in this instance, Melissa's parents are divorced. And the FAFSA asks, when did your parent become divorced or separated? And Melissa's mom was, her divorce occurred last year in 2018. So then it says which parent information will be provided. So in this instance, Melissa's going to provide her mom's information. We're going to click next. Again, keep in mind, the application actually is saving automatically, but at the top, if you want to save it, that's great. And we now have moved on to another section, parent demographics. We're going to click next. So now the FAFSA is going to ask, just like they did for Melissa's information, her mom's social security number. So we're going to put down mom's social security information, and then we're going to put down mom's last name. So mom's last name is Johnson, and mom's first name is Maggie. And Maggie's first initial is M. Mom's date of birth, mom was not born in November, mom was born in September 1975. And then they're going to ask for mom's email address. So it's going to be m2johnson@gmail.com. And again, re-enter mom's email address. So this doesn't seem bad, right? I mean, I know I'm taking my time because I want us to go through each section, but it's not as bad as I'm hoping you were thinking prior to joining the webinar. We're going to click next. So it asks the same question it asked Melissa. Has your mother lived in the District of Columbia for at least 5 years? We're going to say yes and click next. Now, here's another really important question, household size. And the wonderful thing about the FAFSA is it breaks down who is included or who should be included in the house. So your mom counts as 1. Yourself counts as 1. Now your mother's other children, even if they don't live with your mother. So let's say Melissa has a brother. Let's say Melissa's grandmother also lives in the house. So as you can see, if we are adding other people, we now have family members of 4 that are in the household. And then the last question on the bottom is how many people in your mother's household will be college students? Well, Melissa will be the only college student. So we're going to click 1 and hit next. Again, the application was saved, and now it is asking, and look, remember earlier we talked about tax information. It says you must provide financial information from your mother's 2018 tax return. So here's where, depending on what your mother has filed or not filed. So there are 3 options for the FAFSA. You've already completed filing your taxes for 2018. You will file because there are certain instances where maybe you haven't, or you're not going to file. Melissa's mom, Maggie, has completed her taxes. So it asks what type of income tax return did she file. Again, all these options will be available. So you can see there's a IRS 1040-NR, 1040-NR-EZ, and there's just an IRS 1040. Now it also asks what's the tax filing status. We're going to say head of household. Now, again, remember earlier I mentioned individuals are eligible to use the IRS data retrieval tool. And so here it shows you where you can link to the IRS data retrieval tool. Now, this is for intent and purposes of the demo, we're not going to be able to link because this is not a live site as far as linking actually to the information. We're doing a demo, but this option is available. Now, we're going to click next. And it says, as you can see, applying is faster and easier with the IRS DRT. We don't have to link to it again, so we're just going to say no thanks. And we're going to click next. When we do that, again, for the demo purposes, you can still manually put in the information. So here's where we're going to put in Maggie's information. So it asks for Maggie's adjusted gross income for 2018. So Maggie's AGI was $55,000, okay? And then we're going to click next. Then it asks for Maggie's wages, salaries, and tips. So we're going to make that number, let's just say 47,000, okay? And then we're going to click next. So here is where it asks for your mother or Maggie's income tax information. This is the total amount on the IRS form. And the great thing about the FAFSA is it shows you exactly which lines you should use to calculate the number we need. So here it tells you line 13 minus line 46, which is awesome. It really does give you great navigation for the information that you need. So let's say Maggie's income tax was, let's say $500, and click next. Now here's more financial information that we need. And up here, we're again in parent financials. So these are questions specifically related to Maggie's financials or her monetary situations. So I'm going to quickly go through some of these just so you can see some of the questions. Education credits, untaxed portions of IRS distributions, IRA deductions and payments, tax-exempt interest income. Now, some of you are probably like, I have no idea if that's me. Well, again, you can use the buttons, the question mark buttons over here on the right-hand side to see if these pertain to you. I will say this, if it doesn't pertain to you, then it's going to be 0. And the FAFSA application defaults to 0. There's a question about scholarship information. It includes benefits, living allowances, and let me just click on this so you all can see that it asks how much taxable college grant or scholarship aid did your parent report. So you must enter the amount of any college grant or scholarship that your parent reported as income to the IRS for 2018. Again, these questions are very specific. If that is not applicable to you, then it's 0, and then we click next. Again, child support your mother paid because of a divorce, earnings from work, or taxable earnings from a need-based employment program. Again, the FAFSA defaults to 0. It's not applicable to Maggie. A couple of more questions. Child support received for all children, housing, food, and other living allowances paid to members of the military. Believe it or not, these are questions that are applicable to certain individuals, and this is why we have it. All of this information is used to determine how much aid and assistance the student can receive. We're going to click next. So as of today, these are critical questions. What is your mother's total current balance of cash savings and checking account? So what's in her checking account? What's in her savings? You would add all of those up. And when you add all of that up, you've got about, let's say, $500. And then what is the net worth of your mother's investments, including real estate, but not the home? A lot of people think your mortgage is included in determining how much your student can receive. That is not the case. There's no net investments or earnings, and then current investments or investment farms. Not applicable to Maggie. I'm going to click next. So now we've saved that information, but now they're asking we must include tax return information for the student, for Melissa. Now, Melissa has not worked, so we're going to say that Melissa is not going to file. Now, notice that when she clicks she's not going to file, based on your responses, she is not eligible to transfer her information from the IRS into the FAFSA. And that's okay because she hasn't filed taxes, and that makes sense. So the next question asks is, did she earn anything from working, wages, salary, and tips? And the answer is no, so we're going to put 0. We're going to click next. And then child support paid, earnings, similar questions, but you never know. Or notice the last question, taxable earnings from need-based employment programs such as federal work study. So this is their first year going in, but maybe when she's in school this year, she may do work study, and that's where she would need to report any tax information based on her work study job. But it's all 0. We're going to click next. Similar questions, child support received, veteran non-education benefits. Again, read these questions and you can kind of see whether it does or doesn't apply to you. But again, they default to 0, and that's the case. So today, what is the total current balance of cash? We're gonna say Melissa's got about $50 in her bank account. Any net worth of investments, that's a 0. And then investment farms is a 0. Then we're gonna click next. Okay, so look, we are at the end of the application, and we did that, wow, probably in about 30 minutes, but we're not done yet. So it asks you, are you a preparer? In instances, and notice it says this is rare. When you're filling out the FAFSA, you are not a preparer. You are going to be doing it whether you're the student or the parent. So we're gonna click no and click yes. Now, here's where you can look at the information you've already put in. So you've got a student demographic information. You have all of the answers to the questions. So you can review what you've used on the FAFSA. Look at all the school information. This is just to make you say, let me make sure everything I put is accurate. So once you've looked over all of the questions, you're gonna click next. And you can also print that page. So this is the last part of the FAFSA before we are done. You must provide a student signature and a parent signature. So let's click on provide student signature. And it just is a proclamation or just reading a disclaimer or disclosure stating that you agree to all the information. You're gonna click next. Now, remember when you're filling out the FAFSA, this is where you'll put your FSA ID, which is your username and password. Because we did not create one for the demo, there are, we're gonna submit without signatures, so you can see what it looks like when you're done. So we're gonna click next. So notice my signature status is submit without signature. We're gonna do the same for the parent. Again, for demo purposes, we're gonna agree to the disclaimer, and then we're going to submit without signature and click next. Now, we are at the very end. All we have to do is submit and we are done. Congratulations, Melissa. Your FAFSA was successfully submitted. Awesome. Now, what happens next? You will receive an email version of this page. This is the confirmation page. You all have heard of something called a SAR, which is a student aid report. That will give you an EFC and tell you what you potentially qualify for. That is not your financial aid award letter. You will get that via a portal from your school that might be mailed to your house. But again, this is just confirmation that you have successfully submitted your FAFSA. A lot of people bypass this step. They think they've finished and they really haven't. So it just tells you what to look out for. Your school will contact you if they need any information and discuss your financial aid award. You can print this page. Now, again, for demo purposes, it says an estimated EFC. So that's what you will also get. But again, it's gonna say 9999 only because, again, this is a demo site. But this is just to show you what you will see on the confirmation page. Now remember, I mentioned that Melissa was in foster care. It says you reported that you are or were in foster care. She may be eligible for assistance through federal programs. And it basically directs her to where she should go for additional assistance that might be available to her. Her state ETD coordinator. So again, what we're doing is linking up other aid that can be also used with federal financial aid. But we're all done. And then at the bottom, it tells you again that graduation, retention, and transfer rate from schools. So this really wasn't that bad, but this is literally how it would go if you were filling out your FAFSA. So I see it's 3:51. I'm gonna go back to our PowerPoint presentation. And I forgot to mention that this webinar, we will send you all the PowerPoint slides at the conclusion of the webinar, and also the link where you can find the recording, which will be available in 1 to 2 weeks. So don't worry. I know I went through this kind of fast due to the constraints of the hour, but you can go back and reference this webinar at your leisure when you view our recording. So very quickly, what I would love to do is share with you some tools and online tools and resources that can help you when you are trying to navigate this financial aid journey. So Federal Student Aid has some wonderful online resources for you all. We have social media. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, we have a YouTube page. Our YouTube page has videos, we tweet, and we have a Facebook page that gives a lot of information about questions you may have. When I'm done with college, what happens next? What happens to my loans? what do I need to do every year to prepare? Is there anything to prepare? What documents do I need? Again, we have many resources. Our StudentAid.gov page in the middle is the place to go for you students and parents. As you can see, and I'll show you a screenshot, there's lots of different information on there that can help you. And then we have a 1-800 number. I want you all to write this number down if you don't have it already. You ready? You have a pen? It's 1-800-433-3243. It's 1-800-433-3243. It's 1-800, the number 4 FedAid. We have people standing by at any time to answer questions about your specific circumstance, Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Okay, it's really important that if you do have questions, don't be afraid. We have resources available to you. Call the 1-800 number. Okay, so here is a screenshot of StudentAid.gov. Prepare for college, the type of aid, who gets aid, the FAFSA, and how to repay loans. I really encourage you all at your leisure to go to our StudentAid.gov website and look at all the information on there. It will really help you if you have questions. And then here is our Facebook page. As you can see, we've got lots of information, tips on how to save money, various why go to college or career school. There's a lot of information out there if you're unsure of what direction to go in. We tweet, need advice on college. If you have a question, you can tweet us and we have colleagues that will answer your questions. Then we also have a YouTube page. We have wonderful videos about the process. So this was a webinar that was about an hour long, but we've got 2 to 3 minute videos of what is the FAFSA? What is the process from start to finish? A lot of you want to know that. You can go there and view the videos and they will help. And here's a link. Again, I will make sure that you all receive a link to the webinar recording, but also a PDF of the PowerPoint. Here is a blog that the Department of Education has, and this is really important because before you fill out the FAFSA, or if you've already filled it out and you want to know how to avoid some mistakes, common mistakes, 11 common FAFSA mistakes. This is something I think you all could really benefit from to help you in the process, because if there's errors on the FAFSA, you've got to correct them, and it takes a long time, and it prolongs the process to get the financial aid letter or award that you're looking for. So it's better to take your time and make sure you've got as much accurate information as possible to submit. If you make an error, it's okay. You can go back and make corrections. But what we want to do is to avoid as much as possible making mistakes. This is a wonderful blog that can help you in that process. And then webinars. This webinar is something that we conduct. We have webinars each month, and in the coming year, we will have more webinars about the FAFSA process. Maybe you all would like a webinar on what happens next, or who is part of the FAFSA process, or who is my parent when I fill out the FAFSA. We're going to have some new webinar topics. If you want to view this recording, the URL that you see on the screen is where you would go. And then there's a brief survey that we would like you all to fill out based on what you've learned here today. I'm really hoping that this webinar at least gave you a little more insight into the types of questions that you may be asked, and more importantly, the type of information you need, or what you can do, or where you can go if you're unclear about what is required. There are a lot of questions, but I do think that, as you saw, I know that I'm familiar with the FAFSA, but if you really just take your time, I really think it's not that bad. And I'm hoping that this has dispelled some myths, that you feel a little more comfortable and confident in filling out the form. So we've got about 4 minutes left, and I know my colleagues have been answering questions, so I so appreciate my colleagues out there answering questions for all the people that have been online. So we've got a couple of hundred folks, so there are actually a lot of people. So what I'm going to try to do is answer some questions that have been asked. So will there be handouts for the slides? Absolutely. I will make sure that you all get this information. You will all receive an email with a survey link as well as the PDF of the PowerPoint, and then the webinar recording will be available at the link that I referenced. So in about 1 to 2 weeks. So make sure that you check the website in 1 to 2 weeks for this webinar. Once everything is signed and submitted, and then you realize you made a mistake, can you go back and correct the mistake? Excellent question, and I think I covered that. So yes, you can correct any mistakes and resubmit. Simply log back into the FAFSA, edit and resubmit. So yes, I think I talked about that, but yes, I think a lot of people are not sure if you can go back and do that, but you absolutely can do that. So the maximum Pell is only 6915. I thought it was 6480. What's the correct amount? You can go to our federal Pell program PDF to find that out. Let's see. Can we get a recording of the presentation? Absolutely. I'm so glad that you feel like you can share this with your counselors. We've got students and parents on here as well. I really appreciated that I saw that people that signed up were people that are probably like, this is my first time, or if I could get a little more information, it would really help me a lot. So I'm hoping that a lot of the information that we provided today did just that. Let's see. Here's another question. I found that when parents create an FSA ID, they can't immediately use it to either sign the FAFSA or use the DRT. They have to wait about 3 days. Is that correct? Let's see. For usage tools such as IRS DRT, one must wait until the Social Security verification has been completed. So as I mentioned earlier with the FSA ID, you can create your FSA ID right away. The student and the parent both have to create a separate FSA ID. They cannot share one. Each one needs an FSA ID. Once they create it, there is a Social Security verification that happens, which is usually 1 to 3 days. Now, they can still submit a new FAFSA application right away. They don't have to wait for the Social Security verification to complete the FAFSA. However, when it comes to re-signing or a renewal, they may need to wait or using the DRT. But it's usually 1 to 3 days, and also to know if your Social Security number has been verified, there's an FSA ID profile. You can go in your profile and there's something that says verified. If the check mark is there, it lets you know that your Social Security number has been verified. A lot of times people get to the end of their FAFSA and they can't sign it. Something's wrong with the FSA ID. And usually a common error that we get is that people have put down for their Social Security number a 9 instead of an 8. So a lot of times if you're getting an error message when it's time to sign, you know you've created an FSA ID, but it's not letting you complete your FAFSA, go back into your FSA ID profile, check your FSA ID, make sure all the information in your FSA ID is accurate, because there might be a problem with it there, and if that verification doesn't occur, if the verification doesn't occur, it won't let you completely sign your FAFSA if there's an issue with the information you provided. If there's no issue, you're able to sign right away initially, but the verification will allow you to further make changes later on in the process. Okay, one more question. I know it's 4 o'clock. I have submitted our FAFSA with 10 schools, but I need to add more. How do I know that the correct schools on the list have received the data if I delete them? So that's an excellent question, Kathy. So the department automatically sends information to the new schools after you click and submit. So the information is not going to get deleted. You should definitely not worry that because the information is been replaced with a new school, that it didn't delete the existing school's information. But if you're not sure and you want to just double check, you can absolutely follow up with the school with the existing information, the first set of schools, and just say, hey, I sent my information. I just want to make sure that you received it. Okay. So with that, I appreciate you all joining in today. I know you all had a lot of questions, and I really appreciate my colleagues trying to answer all the questions from you all. We had such a high demand today for this webinar, so I do think that in the future we will continue to keep doing our line by lines and maybe do additional ones so that it can help you all in this process. I wish you all the best of luck filling out the FAFSA. It's not as bad as you think. There's tons of resources out there. Use the 1-800 number, use the chat functionality, click the question buttons if you're not sure of the questions. And good luck, and to all the students out there and the parents. Education is key, and we want to make sure they have federal financial aid available to them. You all have a great day.